Hey there, Margie Bryce here, bringing you the Crabby Pastor podcast. Why Crabby Pastor? Because if you don't attend to your sustainability, if you don't cultivate sustainability into your lifestyle, then your ministry influence will be deeply diminished. And let me tell you, that's going to make you crabby, as well as some other things. Even your relationships, family, friends, congregants, those you serve with in ministry will be impacted, and that will make you crabby as well. So the Crabby Pastor is an honest conversation, an honest telling of what really makes us crabby and how we can rise above that, how we can work through that, how we can cultivate sustainability into our lives and into our ministry. If you have served in ministry any length of time, you have been trained to do something called the non-anxious presence. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. It certainly is very helpful. However, we can do the non-anxious presence and watch things blow up all around us while we're still doing the non-anxious presence. But meanwhile, in all honesty, sometimes there's a lot of crabbiness going on inside in our hearts and in our minds. So this is being honest about ministry leaders and our crabbiness. If any of you have met with colleagues, it seems like it frequently turns into a crab fest about what's going down where you're at. And, if you listen to this at any length of time, you pretty much figure out that there's a lot of that going down. So you can be a crabby pastor, and that's what we want to avoid here. We want to offer you some skills, some abilities, so that you can have a great ministry run, so that you can do the works that God has set out and prepared in advance for you to accomplish. There's a lot of burnout out there, and while we're kind of addressing that, and I have been there and done that on the burnout scale, while we're addressing that, we're also going to talk about pace and load a lot. Pace is like how fast you're running, and if you are in the culture, which you certainly are, you notice that things do seem accelerated. And that is because the rate of change in our culture is accelerated. Some have estimated that the COVID virus pandemic has accelerated online functionality, whether it's purchasing of goods or how we do life, by like 10 years. In the matter of maybe one-ish or so. So this Crabby Pastor podcast is for ministry leaders wondering how to approach this post-COVID ministry era while you're still recovering from the most stressful and challenging era in ministry. And we can see from some of the variants, we're not sure that's all over yet either. So if you are a ministry leader who needs a little help and encouragement building sustainability into your life and into your ministry, because we're geared to serve others and not serve ourselves so much, and that's kind of good. But on the flip side of that, there lurks something a whole lot more dangerous, like becoming a pastor who is crabby on the inside and sometimes even on the outside. And here's what that kind of looks like. You can be going to the grocery store and getting in line somewhere, and the line is long, and you're, in all honesty and sincerity of heart, you will say, I'm going to stand in this line and I'm going to work on my patience. But then a few moments later, you're watching the person at the self-checkout who is ahead of you by a few people, and you start thinking things like, oh my goodness, you should not even be in this line if you do not know how to work the self-scanner. For heaven's sakes, what is wrong with you? Which I hate to admit, but I have done that kind of thought process before. So there you go. You just blew your whole practice of patience. It's gone in an instant. So You don't want to be crabby on the inside, because sometimes it will indeed head to the outside. So, I'm Margie Bryce. I am your coach with boots on the ground expertise backed by the books. I have been there and done that as far as living into being a crabby pastor. I have even been burnt out working hard for the kingdom. Today, I am teaching at a Christian university and seminaries. And my passion is to work alongside of ministry leaders to help build some sustainability into their lifestyle so that you can dare to follow the dreams the Holy Spirit has for you and for the ministry God has granted you. Because I believe the Holy Spirit is doing a new thing in the life and purposes of those who radically follow Jesus Christ. I really do. I believe that this transitional time for the church, which we are just in the middle of still, is a time where the Holy Spirit is going to engender some real serious creativity. But how do you hear that? How do you slow down and stop and listen to that with the whirlwind going on around you and the crabbiness overtaking you? Now, maybe you're saying, I think you're a little harsh with this crabby thing. I would argue back, but let's just say if you don't want to own the title crabby, maybe there's times where you're thinking about you might become crabby about a situation, or even a congregant, a person. Oh my. That's fine. That's fine. Hang with us anyway, because we're going to talk about how to manage our pace and load, how to manage ourselves. You don't want your ministry influence deeply diminished. You don't want your relationships around you impacted in a really serious way. You want to give God your best. I know pastors do that in all sincerity. But we have a very challenging era in which we feel the tendency to run fast while we're carrying a very heavy load, and that is a grim combination over any length of time. I'm not saying there aren't eras where that might be required for a short period, but I'm saying if that is your long-term strategy, and the pressure you face by this post-COVID ministry era certainly can contribute to that, then I'm saying you need to be in our little community here where we talk openly and honestly about the things that make us crabby and ways that we can build sustainability so the crabbiness stays at bay. So if any of that speaks to you, you need to get in on this community. You can visit my website at margiebryce.com. There's ways that you can join up for a monthly newsletter. My Facebook group is Self-Care and Sustainability for Ministry Leaders. Be sure and get in on that, because we're going to talk openly, honestly, and work hard to not be the crabby pastor.